There is one question that mankind has grappled with since the beginning of time, and it comes up today in our reading. Hello, and welcome to In a Minute, the video series reading the Bible one chapter a day, 5 days a week. Today's reading is John chapter 9. Jesus and his disciples encounter a blind man who was blind from birth. It was likely at the temple gates where people unable to work would beg for gifts. It was commonly believed at that time that sickness was a direct result of sin. The disciples' question shows that we have been wrestling with the question of human suffering for a long time. Yes, suffering came into the world because of sin, but an individual's suffering is not always the result of their own sin. Bad things do happen to good or innocent people. Jesus rejects the conventional way of thinking and shows that there are times when God allows suffering in order to show his glory, and he always uses it for a good purpose for all involved. Clay and saliva were a common remedy to treat eye infections in that day, and Jesus uses the practice in the healing of the blind man. It was not the method, but the man's faith and action by washing that is important. Imagine the man's joy in seeing for the very first time in his life. It must have been a glorious moment for all who witnessed it. But instead of rejoicing with the man, the Pharisees became angry because of a so-called broken rule. They even questioned if the man had really been blind and demanded verification from his parents. The man's parents dodging the question about Jesus may seem harsh to us, but we must realize how severe excommunication would have been. They would have been banned from the community and fellowship, and others would not even be allowed to do business with them. But no one could shake the faith of the once blind man. His encounter with Christ had not only given him sight, but it had given him spiritual insight. It was the leaders that were blinded by their own pride and prejudice. They became so outraged, they made the man an outcast. And as you read today, take a moment and think about what it would have been like to be this man who had never seen the sunrise, or the color of a flower, or the face of another human being. Then you encounter Jesus. Your whole existence changes. Then pay attention to the conversation between this man and Jesus at the end of the chapter. Note that at the beginning of chapter 9, the man calls Jesus a man. Then in verse 17, a prophet. And finally, he comes to full faith in him as the Son of God.